The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to APQC's monthly knowledge management support call. My name is Darcy Lemons, and I am a senior advisor and project manager here at APQC, hopefully a voice of sanity in the craziness that is going on in our world today. Delighted to be here with you all, connecting with you all today. Let me just go over quickly what we're going to cover during our time together, and then we'll get into the heart of our conversation today. So today I want to cover just briefly APQC's KM Capability Assessment Tool, and then we're going to take a deep dive into one of the 12 categories covered by the KM Capability Assessment Tool. And today's discussion area is business case. Then we're going to spend a little bit of time the benefits of completing the assessment and assessing your KM program against the maturity model. And then I want to mention APQC's Excellence in Knowledge Management Awards at the end and tell you a little bit about what we're doing there, and we'll be done for the day. Please feel free to, if you have any questions along the way, to raise your hand or type your questions into the Q&A feature in your GoToWebinar control bar. And time permitting, we'll take some questions towards the end of today's discussion. All right? Okay, let's get started. Let me see if the technology is going to coordinate or cooperate with me here and let me advance. There we go. All right. So APQC's KM Capability Assessment Tool assesses your KM program across 12 categories that cover 146 different capability statements. And together with APQC's levels of knowledge management maturity, these two, the model and the assessment tool, help you build a really strong KM program. The 5 levels of knowledge management maturity, which are shown a little bit later in today's discussion, and the assessment tool are all based on best practices, 20+ years of best practices in knowledge management. We built them just a little over a decade ago in collaboration with several APQC members. And I was privileged to be a part of some of those initial conversations. So I feel like I helped birth this baby, if you will. So last month we talked about the objectives category and associated capabilities. And this month we're going to talk about the business case category and capabilities. And as you can see, business case is right here in the middle with the strategy macro category of the assessment tool. And if you have the opportunity to download the assessment tool, what you'll find is that there is a tab for each of these 12 categories in the assessment tool. And business case is the 3rd tab after the demographics tab and objectives. So why do we want to talk about business case with you all today? Well, the business case is actually one of the critical drivers of a strong KM program. We did some research a few years ago looking at or trying to identify those drivers and enablers. And we took all the data that we had gathered to date at that point through the assessment and did some very deep statistical analysis and identified business case, change management, and measures as 3 key drivers of success for KM programs. So today we'll focus on business case, and in future calls we'll talk about change management capability and the measurement capability. But you know, a formal business case, I know a lot of organizations and people are just like, why do we have to do this, Darcy? I get asked this a lot. As the project owner or process owner for APQC's KM Capability Assessment Tool, I get a lot of these questions. And I tell people, you know, there's multiple benefits. There's a lot of really good reasons for creating that business case for your knowledge management program when you're getting started. First of all, it helps define the scope of the proposed program or initiative in your organization, and it also helps you describe the anticipated costs and benefits and risks associated with the CAM program or initiative. It helps you really think through and identify your key stakeholders, who your target audience is, and the leadership associated with that target audience. And it also forces you to start thinking about what are our initial measures of success. When you bring it all together, then it provides a formal written or documented summary in the form of a proposal. It provides you the justification for your efforts in knowledge management. It outlines the resources required and the anticipated benefits. In essence, it really helps demonstrate the business value of the KM efforts, and those should never be underestimated. So let's get started and take a deep dive into the business case category and its associated capabilities. All right, on this slide you can see the levels 1 and 2 for the business case and the associated capability statements for both of those. So I want to walk you through these statements on this slide and the next two, and we'll go through all 5 levels of the maturity for the business case category. So what do we want to know with regard to your business case? Well, at level 1, what we really want to know is what was that wake-up call or that catalyst to capture and share knowledge in your organization? What were those business drivers that are pushing the need for knowledge management, better knowledge sharing and collaboration inside your organization? That could be some recurring challenges that your organization may be facing, such as the impending loss of experience and expertise due to retirement, due to layoffs, which we're certainly hearing a lot about in today's world. It could be due to the fact that maybe there are mistakes that are being repeated over and over again and re-experienced over and over again and costing the organization money as a result. Other rationales or drivers might include that we want to provide our employees with processes and techniques that better enable them to collaborate and break down silos and share their experience and knowledge with each other so that they can improve their skills and perform better in their jobs. It can be to help new hires gain competency faster, and or maybe capturing and sharing best practices and lessons learned is the real focus. There's a whole spectrum of reasons why, but with this first level of maturity, the rationale for action is established. That's what we're really looking for. Is what was that rationale? What was that wake-up call or that catalyst? And to do that, sometimes it's really crisp and clear. And it's just the problem, the challenge is just staring you in the face. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes it may be a little bit more nebulous, and you have to do a little bit of research in order to really crisply define what that rationale is. And there may be multiple reasons or multiple drivers for the need for knowledge management in your organization. One organization that has completed the assessment in the past stated that after doing some research, only 35% of its employees were actually collaborating with other employees in similar roles in other departments or functional areas around the globe. So they saw a real lack of collaboration there, and they felt that it was hindering their ability to achieve the business objectives of the organization. The NASA agency, when they were initially getting started with knowledge management, one of the things they found through some research was that half of their research and development spend was being wasted on duplicative work that had already been done before or was being done by multiple groups in different offices or sites, but they didn't know that the other groups were working on similar problems and trying to come up with similar solutions. They also discovered through that piece of research that there was a lot of waste in terms of millions of dollars being spent on time people were spending searching for information that they couldn't find. And ultimately, sometimes we're having to go outside the organization to find the information that they were looking for. Can anybody relate to that? I think we've all experienced that at some point in time in our professional careers, right? But it's facts like these that grab the attention and help create a receptive audience for knowledge management inside your organizations. So once you have your rationale and you know what those drivers are, what do we typically see happening next? Well, the focus then shifts on to identifying and refining or understanding those business needs and aligning your KM efforts to those business needs. And here we typically see that early KM team is identifying focus areas for knowledge management interventions based on those identified business needs. So to do that, again, they have to make sure that they really understand the problem to be addressed, the target audience that is being impacted by this challenge or this problem, and the knowledge needs of that target audience and their critical success factors. All of this kind of information could at some point inform a potential pilot project to try out a new KM approach or knowledge sharing system or process to help the group being supported by the KM team. For example, at NextEra Energy, when they were initially getting started, they identified a need to improve enterprise-wide collaboration. So they began by focusing on existing division-level expertise location, content management, and knowledge transfer efforts across their organization. At Bombardier, they identified a need to support the product engineering group and better enable knowledge transfer across generations within that engineering group. So they targeted key roles and responsibilities and set out performance objectives to enable that knowledge transfer. And at MITRE, a federal research organization, they identify focus areas for KM almost yearly. And they do this based on corporate strategy and strategic business needs. And so for this year, they said that, for example, their KM focus areas are on improving the learning environment, and they provided several details around that, applying intelligent technology, and business transformation integration. So once you have those needs identified, or the focus areas, the business needs identified and the focus areas for KM, it's really critical that at that point to just do a quick little bit of due diligence and make sure that these are key areas for the organization, that they are aligned to and support business strategies and critical success factors. Sometimes we have a lot of different groups pulling on the knowledge management team wanting support, and depending on your resource levels and budget and all of that, you might have to do some prioritization and make some initial choices as to where to focus those efforts, which ones are going to have the greatest impact and support for business strategies and critical success factors. And so what we've found is that to do that, you need to engage with your senior business leaders and others who have a lot of experience and expertise in the organization to truly understand what those needs are. Those people in turn often become advocates for the knowledge program and will champion the use of the knowledge sharing approaches and tools and processes and systems. Managers and employees, we've noted, often take KM more seriously when they see these connections to improvement efforts, process improvement efforts, to innovation initiatives, and other wide-ranging business objectives that you might have within your organization. And a lot of times then it becomes part of the regular annual cycle, or maybe it's semi-annual, every 6 months or so, that the KM team approaches these senior leaders and experienced individuals within their organization to get their input on the direction of the KM program and touch base and say, hey, are we still meeting your needs? Are the things that we're doing and the processes and the systems and approaches that we've put in place, the tools and the templates, are these helping your people? Are we on target? Where might we be off base and need to adjust course? So you want to have some semi-regular conversations with these key stakeholders to ensure that that connection between KM and the business remains in place. At SNC Lavalin, for example, their KM team meets regularly with business leaders from across the company to discuss their needs and direct or potentially redirect the KM strategy. A couple of years ago, it was through those conversations that they actually identified a need for a more consistent and holistic approach to lessons learned across the organization. So they designed and built and launched a lessons learned platform that they call Insights, and did that all as a result of having those conversations with their business leaders. So, whatever approaches you can take to do that, might be some one-on-one conversations and interviews with different individuals. You might be able to do this through some focus groups with key users in your organization, surveys. There are a variety of different tools that you can use to do this, although we certainly advocate more for the actual conversation over a survey. Maybe conversation supplemented by some surveys or data gathering along those lines. All right, so you've got your rationale, you have the business needs, you've identified your KM focus areas. What's next? Well, the next thing at level 3 is really bringing it all together into that cohesive business case. And typically what we see at level 3 maturity in most organizations, just across the board, across the 12 capabilities, is that the KM team and the organization are working to standardize their knowledge flow processes and various KM approaches and processes and whatever IT or enabling technology systems and platforms that they might have in place. And so in terms of the business case capability, the organization or the KM team really has begun to analyze and document measures of success and the anticipated benefits that they expect to achieve as a result of improving knowledge sharing or knowledge management capabilities within the organization. And many times, although many business leaders really prefer a cost-benefit analysis of some type that talks about or addresses impact on things like productivity, quality, safety, or other key performance indicators for the organization. When your team and your organization then implement your knowledge sharing approaches and tools, you're doing this because you want to move the needle, right? You want to make improvements in areas like we just stated, productivity or quality or safety. It might be things that ultimately can impact cycle time or even potentially revenue for your organization. So to do that, we have to be able to demonstrate how what we do from a KM perspective, capturing and transferring and applying best practices, or capturing and applying lessons learned, or getting people involved in communities of practice, especially our new hires, so that we can transfer key knowledge to them and enable them to develop their competency and become productive employees more quickly than we have in the past. We have to make that connection, and the business case is one way to do that, to make that connection between what are we doing from a KM perspective and the impact it could have on the business, and drawing that connection or that correlation out for our business leaders and stakeholders. So, for example, cognizant technology solutions, for every knowledge management, they call them assets. So for every knowledge management asset, such as a solution accelerator. Now, Cognizant Technology is a, just so y'all know, they're a professional services, IT professional services firm. So for each of their specific KM assets, they estimate benefits in terms of effort reduction and or productivity improvement. And at MITRE, for example, they collect metrics on almost all of their KM capabilities. For some new platforms that they've recently put into place, they collected data on the adoption rate of those platforms, and through the adoption rate, then they went on to collect data on how did this improve product collaboration, and through that things like connectivity, productivity, and the ability to be more effective and efficient in their roles. So our research has found that organizations that do this, that put together this formal business case, are way more likely to be able to secure the resources and budget that they need to enable the KM program. We also find that typically, whereas up to this point you may have been operating off of a kind of an informal business case, the more you need that more formal business case, that it replaces the more informal kind of rationale that we talked about earlier with a formal document that includes all of the elements we previously talked about: the problem statement, the scope, the goals, the opportunities for improvement, resource requirements, measures of success, a timeline, risks and constraints, all the things that you might typically see in a business case, a formal business case document. And that once you do that, or organizations that do that, our research shows that these organizations that document the business case and the anticipated KM benefits are more than 5 times more likely to procure those resources and budgets that they're asking for initially, and to be able to go on then and expand the program, which is a level 4, I'll get to that in just a moment, and continue to secure ongoing resources and budget. So let me go ahead, since I jumped the gun a little there, and move on to level, the next couple of levels. There we go. So at here you can see the capability statements for level 4 and level 5. And by level 4, what we typically see in organizations who are getting up to this level, they've piloted different KM approaches, whether that's might be some technology approaches to enable collaboration, things like Teams, Yammer, other artificial intelligence or natural language processing type technologies to enable better search and content management. They might be piloting communities of practice or lessons learned processes and systems, but they've piloted or tested these, they've learned from those pilots, and then they incorporated those learnings into what you might say a refined or revised business case, and then gone to leadership to say, okay, here's what we've learned, we're ready to expand, and here's what we need to support that expansion based on some predicted gains and the predicted impacts to the organization. The one good example of that comes to us from the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland, which initially rolled out communities of practice using a phased pilot approach, you could call. And it was a 6-month pilot approach, if I recall correctly. And during that time, the bank's KM team collected a lot of user feedback to verify that the communities were serving their stated purpose. Each community had a charter with objectives and goals. That they were meeting the business needs that had been identified, and they were also using that feedback to monitor participation in the communities and how well people were sharing and collaborating with each other. At the end of the pilot, then they collected some impact data, and then did some analysis and refined their business case, went to their leadership to say, you know, here's what we've learned, here's what we propose. We would like to launch X number of more communities while continuing to support the initial ones, and they were able to secure approval for doing that. One of the things our data shows us, however, is that the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland and others of you who may have created this business case, you're among the minority, actually. Only approximately 38% of organizations who have completed our CAIM capability assessment stated that they have taken the step to create a formal business case that describes the expected benefits and impact of applying KM to those business focus areas or opportunities. And only 24% of the organizations then take the time to actually do some type of financial analysis to support those business cases. However, the organizations that do these, that 38%, right, they can present concrete numbers, and they are way more successful in nearly every area of the KM program development, from the business case, securing funding or budget, getting the resources they need, etc. And then at level 5, and I'll be honest with you guys, it is really, it is quite rare that an organization gets to a level 5 across all 12 capabilities in our KM capability assessment. However, it does happen. And I'm actually in a few minutes going to share the names of a few organizations that have achieved that. But at level 5 maturity with regard to the business case, you know, you've got that business case now, and what you're able to do as a result of having that business case and building the program based on that business case is you're able to leverage the organization's knowledge as a marketable asset or attribute, and leverage it also, or leverage your KM capabilities in order to collaboratively for value creation with your suppliers and customers. And we've actually seen several organizations that have been able to do this. EY, a professional services firm, is one such organization. You know, their bottom line is directly influenced by knowledge reuse, and their project teams must leverage their content and therefore their knowledge in their projects to reduce cycle time and increase margin. And this is something that they are able to bring to bear when they are working to secure new business for the organization. Caterpillar is another organization, level 5 in this area, and one of the ways one of the things is they have a really strong community of practice program, and not all of their communities, but a significant portion of their communities are open to external participation. Usually these are partners, corporate partners with the organization, such as dealerships across around the world. And these communities are specifically designated within their knowledge network, which is their online community practice system, and allows their employees and their external partners to collaborate with each other, to ask and answer questions, share expertise, and share, you know, best practices and lessons learned globally. Cognizant Technology also enables better collaboration with their customers and vendors and suppliers through their knowledge management platforms. And S&C Loveland, which is an engineering firm, they have been able to leverage their communities and their insights, their lessons learned platform to showcase the technical expertise of the company. And they actually create a technical journal that is promoted via social media to their clients and to STEM students and practicing engineers. And their HR recruiters actually use that journal and their KM platform and programs to attract talent to the organization. So some great examples of what level 5 capability can, with regard to the business case, can really help your organization accomplish in terms of leveraging your knowledge, as a strategic asset for the organization. Okay, so we've covered the 5 maturity levels, and what I'd like to do now is just switch focus slightly and take us to APQC's levels of knowledge management maturity. This is our five-level maturity model here, and the reason I do this is because I want to tell you guys, you have a decision to make. Those of you who are just really getting started. Some of you on the call with us today may be a little bit further along and may have already made this decision for your organization. But for those of you who may still be at level 1 or even level 2, you have a decision to make, and that is what level of maturity is right for your organization. It's something that myself, Cindy, and others here at APQC, we tell organizations all the time. Not every organization needs to be a level 4, level 5. It doesn't make sense for every organization. For some, level 3 is exactly where they need to get. And there's a reason why level 3 is standardized. And you see there it says common processes and approaches. So you have standardized knowledge flow processes, standardized, replicable, repeatable knowledge management or knowledge sharing approaches and techniques and tools and templates. And sometimes when you get to level 3 and you start seeing the benefits and the impact that you're having, that may be as far as you need to go. It may not make sense for you to try to go up to level 4 or level 5. It takes a lot more additional resources and effort to get to those levels and then to sustain at those levels. So that's a conversation that you all want to have inside with your KM teams and your sponsor, your knowledge management sponsor, and potentially other key stakeholders. Say, where on this maturity model, where does it make sense for us to be? Where do we want to strive to achieve and live or sustain at? And we say, we here at APQC believe that everybody should strive for at least a level 3, but we advocate and say, you don't have to go all the way up to level 4 or level 5. But why do we say level 3? Well, it goes back to that standardized, right? You've got these established common processes and approaches. So things start feeling a little bit better. You're not making the sausage as much anymore. You've got things in place and it starts rocking and rolling right along. And you start seeing more effectiveness and efficiency as a result of having those common standard processes and approaches. Now, I will tell you, the feedback we've gotten from organizations that have matured up to a level 3 or higher, they tell me all the time that making that jump from level 2 to level 3 is really challenging, and it takes a lot of sustained focus. So that's why we encourage you to have those internal conversations and to really build that business case, because you're going to need that information that is contained within the business case to help you make the pitch to your organization as to why you need the resources, why it's important to get to level 3, and how that's going to benefit the business overall. Because essentially that's what you're trying to do, is benefit the business, right? So you've got to have that really strong value proposition that's encapsulated inside your business case. The more you strengthen your capabilities, the more you improve your processes and systems and platforms, and the more you improve people's ability to use them to solve problems and brainstorm and share and essentially improve and do better in their jobs and innovate with their knowledge and support of the organization. So just some quick data for you on this next slide. I mentioned at the beginning that we had done some research a few years ago where we collected all the data from the KM capability assessment that we collected then and did some deep statistical analysis to understand the drivers and enablers. And here you can see some of the results, some of the analysis. Essentially that you can see here, 2 times more likely to embed knowledge management capabilities into core business processes. So bringing it to the point of need of the employees, right? Getting it closer to where they actually work so that it's just part of their workflows and not something that they consider to be separate or outside the flow of their work or above the flow of their work. These same organizations are 3 times more likely to enhance their KM capabilities and continue to improve on and build on those once they have them launched. And they're also 3 times more likely to continue to enhance the infrastructure and competencies in response to demand, because as you're improving your capabilities and more people are using them, there's increased demand for them. So you have to be able to respond accordingly to that demand. And you can see that you're 4 times more likely to create that formal business case to enable that expansion and enhancement. So the act of going through the assessment for your organization, your KM team in your organization, really helps you better define those opportunities for improvement, and it will help you create an action plan to act on those opportunities. Yeah, now on this next slide, what I wanted to show you here is just a sample of one of the charts that would be included in the report that you get after completing the KM capability assessment. And in this chart, what you see here is the dark blue bars would represent your organization's maturity results, as shown on the vertical axis. You can see there 0 through 5 representing the levels of maturity. And the horizontal axis has the 12 categories that we assess across. That includes those 146 capability statements. So this is just one of the charts that would compare your organization's data to an blinded aggregate of all participants that have completed the assessment to date. And that's well over 300 entities at this point in time. This is one of a series of charts that are included in that assessment. You also get one that compares your organization to your industry peers, assuming we have a statistically large enough sample size. It also would compare your organization to others that have a similar revenue and operate in similar geographic regions around the world. And in this chart, we wanted to show you snap charts of 3 mature KM programs. And as you can see, looking at this, each of them has a clearly defined value proposition in that second from the left column there. That is a part of their business case. They offer a portfolio of standardized common KM approaches and tools. And if you look at the second from the right column, the results column, they have very well documented results. And these are all things that they can leverage as part of their business case or rationale or proposal when they go to leadership to request perhaps some additional budget to expand to another area of the organization, or to maybe launch or pilot a new approach, knowledge sharing approach, or process or system within their organization. And the feedback that we've collected from organizations that have completed the assessment over the years has helped us identify several benefits, several additional benefits to completing the assessment. And I just want to touch on 3 really quickly. You can see one there, kind of the top left in the honeycomb, the develop business cases for investment. When you're just getting started, especially you're still maybe at that level 1, going through the assessment helps you really identify, what are those KM capabilities? What are those things from a knowledge sharing or collaborative point of view? You may not call it KM in your organization. What are we already doing in our organization along those lines? Yes, we're in the early days, but we're already doing some things to enable collaboration and knowledge sharing. So the assessment helps you identify what those are, where they are, helps you identify, what are some of the enablers and success factors behind those, what are some of the risks associated with those, and where you still have gaps. And you can use that data then as an input into your business case that you can take to leadership to ask for and get approval to move forward with your KM efforts. You can also use this as a strategic planning and decision-making framework. So you can say, we have some opportunities to improve. Where do we want to focus our efforts? What makes the most sense for our organization based on the company's current strategies and business objectives and knowledge needs? Where does it make the most sense for us to invest and improve our current KM capabilities and approaches and systems? And then finally, the last one down on the bottom there, building an explicit plan to move from one level to another. So if you've had that conversation inside your organization and you're like, yes, we want to go and be level 3, that's it, or we want to go all the way up to level 5. Well, taking the assessment, again, helps you identify what are those things we already have in place, check, 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 and where are our gaps, which are opportunities, and then you can leverage the assessment tool and the 146 capabilities to say, okay, well, if we want to get to 5 and we're down here to 2, here are the things that we need to do from a KM capability perspective to get us up to a level 5, and you can put that into a roadmap and a project plan to help you achieve that level, whether it's 3, 4, 5, whatever that may be. All right. So finally, as I bring us to a close here, I want to mention APQC's Award for Excellence in Knowledge Management. And we are announcing our second round of winners at our 2020 KM conference. We initiated the Excellence in KM Award last year at our 2019 conference. We're continuing it forward. It was so well received. We've received such good feedback on it. The awards, as you can see here, they go to organizations that have achieved a level 3, 4, or 5 maturity at either for a business unit, KM that's supporting a business unit, or an enterprise-wide KM program. And you have until December 31st of this year to submit your assessment, and the award recipients then will be honored at APQC's 2021 KM conference. And you can see the dates there on the screen. So I know what you're wondering, well, Darcy, who's already won? Well, let's go check it out. So here is the list of our current award winners, and we've got them divided into programs that are enterprise level KM programs that support the entire enterprise, or KM programs that support a specific business unit within their organization. And I just want to point out how many at the enterprise level here that we have. We saw a real bump in this this year. And some of our 2020 award winners include Arup, Cognizant Technology Solutions, Deloitte, MITRE, NATO, Communications and Information Agency, Infosys, PTT Exploration and Production, SNC-Lavalin, Tata Steel, U.S. Central Command, and then at the business unit level, Capital Group and Mercer. And any of the names that you see up here that I didn't call out, they were our 2019 recipients. We're so excited to have so many new recipients at our that we will formally recognize at our 2020 conference. And just so you all know, we are in the process of interviewing all the winners from this year, the 2020 winners, and we'll write up profiles on them and get those published through our resource library just as quickly as possible, so that if you're curious, you want to know what their programs look like, you want to do some benchmarking of your program to their program, which we highly encourage. It's one of the capabilities in there, by the way. So we'll get those published just as quickly as we can, so that you have an opportunity to read up on those programs and even meet some of the KM team members who will be participating in our 2020 KM conference. And finally, I just want to say that among the 12 capabilities that are outlined in the KM capability assessment, a solid business case is critical for demonstrating upfront understanding of the organization's critical knowledge needs and opportunities to support the business. Your business case should answer, how would sharing knowledge address the business need? How or what is the potential impact or value if we move forward with our KM efforts? And what types of measures and or indicators would indicate success for our organization? KM programs tend to reap what they sow, like any initiative in any, whether we're talking quality or continuous improvement or what have you. And KM programs then that establish clear milestones and measures of success up front are much better positioned to substantiate those claims of value down the road. And your business case can help you really frame up and clarify and define what those milestones and measures of success can be. I do want to mention a couple of resources that APQC has available to you all. There's a document in our resource library called the 20 Questions to Ask Yourself when Developing a KM Business Case. It's an interactive document. It's awesome to use. It'll help you think through. If you go through the questions and answer them, it'll help you develop your business case. We also have interview guides and risk assessment tools and templates and things like that available through our resource library that can help you identify your critical knowledge and where there are business opportunities that that knowledge supports and might be at risk and needs some help, some good KM support so that that knowledge doesn't get transferred or walk out the door or any of the myriad of other things that could happen to it. And we can keep it in the organization and ensure business continuity. So that's all I have for you all today. If you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand or type your question into the Q&A feature in your control bar, and we'd be happy to address those while we still have some time.
Thanks, Darcy. And so we'd like to, again, open it up to you guys. You can use the raise your hand feature, or you can type it into the Q&A window for your questions. Darcy, the first question that came through was, how long does it take to complete the KM capability assessment?
Absolutely. And I'm going to give you a really good consultant type answer and say it depends. And the reason I say that is because it depends on how mature your program and how developed your program already is. So for those organizations that are just starting out on their KM journey, it's not going to take you that long because you just don't have as much going on. So you'll complete it much more quickly, probably within an hour or two, simply because you don't have as much to document. Those organizations that are further along in their journey, perhaps at a level 3, 4, 5, it's going to take you more like possibly like 3 to 4 hours. And again, it's simply because it'll take you a little bit longer to document the information via the assessment. So the assessment, our assessment is an evidence-based tool. And when you go in and start completing it, you basically go through each capability statement, and you say, what does this look like in our organization? What does this behavior or activity look like? Yes, then you check, yes, we do this, and then you provide an example of what that behavior or activity looks like. So it takes you some time because those more developed organizations have more information to share. So it takes them longer to write up and complete the assessment, as opposed to organizations that are just getting started. But I encourage any organization, whether you're getting started today or you've already been doing it for 10 years, the assessment tool can really help you. First of all, because it provides that baseline, right? It's a snapshot in time of what you're doing at the moment that you're completing the assessment. And then you can use it subsequently to help you do any number of things like we previously discussed, building your business case, making some strategic decisions, and things like that. You also can use it then if you take it subsequently, let's say you take it this year and then you take it again in 2021 or 2022, you can see how far you've moved the needle. If the first time you take the assessment, you're level 1, well, the next time you take it, you may be at level 2 or level 3. And so you can use it as a mechanism to mark your progress and show that progress to stakeholders in your organization.
Thanks, Darcy. The next question is, I'll read it to you. It says that they don't have an organization-wide or company-wide program. There are different KM programs like all throughout the business units. So can they take the KM CAT just for their business unit?
Yes, yes. Excuse me. There is in the demographics tab, which is at the beginning of the assessment, one of the questions in there on the demographics tab asks you if you're completing the assessment for an enterprise level program or a business unit level program, or there's an other. And so you can select business unit, and then you would, in the next cell down, you would specify what business unit. Is it, product engineering, or might be sales and marketing, or whatever area of your organization it is, right? And then you would complete it. And so you would complete it through the lens of, what are we doing from a KM perspective in that particular business unit? Absolutely.
Perfect. Thanks, Darcy. I don't see any other questions. Please, if you have a question, go ahead and enter it or raise your hand. And otherwise, we will go ahead and conclude today's call if there are no more questions.
Yeah, so I just want to say the assessment tool is available online through our website, and you can go in and download it and today if you'd like, and feel free to reach out to us if you have any further questions about completing the assessment and how to do that. We also have on the same web page where you find the assessment, you will also see that there's an FAQ, a frequently asked questions area there that that definitely has some helpful information. And we also have a brief, I think it's like 12 or 15-minute long webinar recording available that you can link to and watch that has some tips and tricks for completing the assessment. And if none of those, if you still have questions after looking at all of that, then feel free to reach out to us at KMCAT, that's KMCAT at apqc.org, and that'll come straight to me.
Thanks, Darcy. And we'll be sending out that information along with the recording and the slides from today's webinar. Just look for that from us by Monday at the latest. Thank you all for joining us. Thanks.
Yes,
Darcy.
thank you, everybody. We look forward to seeing you on a future call and hopefully to working with you on your assessments. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.